Hello, students. I received some feedback from you to please redo the lesson that I did on market research, and this time, sir, make it under an hour. So that's what I'm shooting for. This is a retaping of that rather long lesson, but I did have to wait for my home office to be built. You can see that behind me. I think it did a pretty good job, don't you think? Well, if you think that that is possible on a teacher's salary, we have got to talk about salary and expectations because yours are just a little bit high for reality, okay? Anyway, what I will do is I will put a more appropriate background on. How about that? The St. Leonard's Academy logo. Okay. Let's get right down to work. I'm going to start off by sharing my screen here, and then I am going to hide the floating meeting controls and pop everything into slideshow. Here we go. Okay, what do we do when we don't know? This is a question that confronts businesses all the time. And the answer to it has to do with market research. And that might sound like a very boring topic, but I can assure you it's not. It can help us in everyday life, and it certainly helped me to put together this revised presentation. What does this mean to you? Seek first to understand, then act. A boss who was a CFO in a previous job told this to me in no uncertain terms in his office when I visited him in Washington, D.C. And he said, Simon, you really need to seek first to understand and then act. And I was very annoyed about it at the time, but what I think it means is that I did a lot of sort of spinning my wheels without actually getting anywhere. I was expending a lot of energy, but it was not accomplishing what I needed to accomplish. Second one, what does this mean to you? The older I get, the more I understand, the less I know. Well, what it means to me is this. When I got my university degree, I thought I knew everything. And I certainly knew quite a bit. But not very much relative to everything that there is to be known, a very, very small portion. And what I knew, I had not put into practice yet. So I didn't really understand it. I had a knowledge of it, but I hadn't really implemented it. So what do we do when we don't know something that we need to know? Well, there are various options. We could ask, you could call that primary research. We could find out without asking. You could call that secondary research, and we'll get more into that later. You could guess and see what your head comes up with. That didn't work so well for me a few weeks back. I started to have some year nines contact me and let me know that they had received a letter that said their business option was no longer available next year. So in isolation, I naturally assumed that my ticket was up, my job was over, and that's how I acted, actually. I wrote an email, fortunately just to my immediate boss and my mentor, that was not terribly professional because it was driven on a misunderstanding. The fact of the matter is there are some changes in the elective, but also the school has extremely graciously offered me the opportunity to get my qualification in teaching and in another way, because COVID-19 took care of the way that I was going. So, yes, I made a really, really poor judgment in what I didn't know. So guessing, I don't think is such a hot idea because your head will always come up with something that is far worse than reality, in my experience. And the last thing, stay ignorant. Ignorance isn't bliss when it comes to information we need. It is ignorant. Now, I did have a question. I did this presentation to some key worker students who are in the facility. And one of them said to me, is it ever not okay, sir, to know something? And I think the dividing line comes in when it's what we need to know. There, if we legitimately have a need to know that information and a legal right to know it, then we should pursue it. But if we want to know some things that we maybe shouldn't know, well, from a business perspective, there is certain information that we shouldn't know. And that is non-public information. Everything in a business that is not published to the public is confidential, and that should not be violated. It shouldn't be taken from one company and shared with another. There's also something called intellectual property. That's patents and copyrights and trademarks and things that represent a lot of investment by an individual or an organization in developing an idea. And that is protected so that people do it more and more and more. Because if they are not rewarded for inventing things, for example, they will stop being able to invent things. So it's critically important that we do reward people who come up with magnificent new breakthroughs with a period of time where they can receive appropriate payment for that. There's also this also applies to people in terms of surprises. Gender of a baby, for example, birthday party, proposal. And if you don't know these things, you are not ignorant, you are innocent of that knowledge. And that is perfectly okay. In fact, it's vastly preferred, because if you were in possession of some business knowledge, for example, non-public information, that would not be innocent, that would be guilty, and that would be in a court. So with people, though, there are some other areas that fall into the category of I'm not ready to know yet. And I do want to mention that that is very cool. They typically falls into these categories: sex, drugs, alcohol, cigarettes, crime, pornography, gambling, processed food, high in sugar, salt, or fat. I don't really need to know what every cookie tastes like. And there's something called naivety. And that is when you have knowledge and you don't apply it to protect yourself or others. For example, defying the laws of nature, playing with fire, I've seen in this school. I've seen riding your bike in the parking lot frequently, and I've seen running at speed in the halls. All of these things, I would say, are naive. However, it is not naive to maintain your innocence at your age about certain subjects. And don't let anybody, don't let anyone tell you that you are naive when actually you are innocent. Okay, I diverge. In business, knowing information that you need to know is surviving. It just simply allows you to exist in business. But if you understand what to do with it, well, understanding is thriving. Businesses need information that is accurate, inexpensive, and timely. We know that information on customer behavior is more plentiful, more accurate, and cheaper than ever before. And a lot of that has to do with the internet and the tools that we have here. But do we really understand what it means if it's more plentiful, more accurate, and cheaper than ever before? Well, it means that our behavior is more predictable than ever before. And that's a pretty horrifying thing for me as a consumer. But for business, that's a very, very good thing. So when a business decides that it needs to understand something, there are some considerations for business research. Do they want to look at primary research, going straight to the source, or secondary research, going around the source? From a customer perspective, are they going to focus on what the customer is saying or what the customer is doing? Are they going to be asking questions as a researcher, or are they going to be observing behavior? Is it a mass market or is it a niche market? Is it market versus product oriented? Is the business market versus product oriented? Are they focusing on existing customers or are they focusing on potential customers? And are they working with quantitative versus qualitative data? Okay, so let's kind of unwrap all of that and discuss a little bit about what it means. So we're going to look at how a business proceeds when it needs to know something, understand it, and adapt to it. First of all, let's look at primary versus secondary research. And my advice here is don't discount secondary research. Primary research, you see, is time and cost intensive. It takes a long time and it costs a lot of money. And this is things like surveys, interviews, telephone calls, focus groups, Zoom groups, because people couldn't meet face to face for a while. So a lot of the focus groups were done online where they would ask customers about different products, etc. Email questionnaires, text-driven data capture, and behavioral observation. And that's when you look at what a customer's doing, not what they're saying. More about that in a minute. Now, secondary research is much more time and cost efficient. So you might be able to pull, for example, information from a point of sale system, a register, inventory systems, what items are depleted, social media, certainly, mobile data, that's a very, very big one right now. Internet sources, industry advocates, there are representatives of just about every industry who lobby for the interests of that industry, and traditional media, print, radio, and television. Now, have you heard of track and trace by any chance? Well, which one of these sources above do you think track and trace works on? Track and trace is the method by which we are no longer confined to our homes. But it works on surrendering one of the biggest rights to the government that has ever been surrendered. And yet we all, of course, do it willingly because we don't want to be entrapped in our homes. You may have noticed a couple of weeks back, you had to set up your location services again on your device. That was to make room for the government knowing, when they say they need to know it, exactly where you are and who you have been within 2 meters of. Should you get sick, they will receive a phone call, and it's working off a mobile signal. So the only advice I have is once they've finished with it, I do hope they return that right to us. Okay. So saying versus doing. We got to be able to validate our results, because if customers could tell us anything they want to, or potential customers could say anything they want to, you could have said anything you wanted to on the survey I issued you. So you've got to know, you've got to have a way of finding out if what you're saying is really true. Now, here's an example. In 2016, exit poll data, which is the most reliable form of primary source predictor of outcome in an election, because it actually asks customers, what did you just do? Who did you just vote for? And it's the only poll that is able to do that. Otherwise, it's who are you going to vote for? So this is the one time when they can ask, who did you vote for? And it projected Hillary Rodham Clinton as president of the United States. Now, because of some previous issues with presidential elections, it was not legal, frankly, to announce that yet. And it's just as well they didn't, because in the actual result, Donald Trump won. So the same thing happened here with Brexit. Exit poll showed a very slight win for Remain, and what actually happened, well, we all know about that. So if you can't count on the customer to give you accuracy, is there a data source that is behavioral and not speech-based? For example, the internet, a point-of-sale system, or in this particular case, the actual election result. Okay, so there's another factor that businesses have to look at, and that is whether you are asking or whether you are observing. Asking is speech-based. It works very, very well if the subject being investigated is non-controversial. In other words, if there's no need to mislead, then obviously you get some accurate information. You'll be finding out a little bit about how I viewed some of the survey results. I'm obviously making some changes as a result, but you'll also see how I made sure that what you were telling me is actually the truth. It measures what we say we are going to do, and it's valuable to the extent that people are honest and do what they say. And sometimes we do something different than what we say, not because we're being dishonest, but because plans honestly change. Now, observing is behavior-based. It's controversial, it can be controversial with subjects such as alcohol, tobacco, firearms, politics, and religion. It actually is better to observe behavior if you can than to ask, because if you ask, you're going to not quite get the truth. It's like, I can remember the pharmacist asking me again and again when I failed to quit smoking the next time, Mr. Hobden, how many cigarettes do you really smoke? I said, oh, about 10 a day. About 10 a day. That was my stock answer for all of my smoking. I ended up smoking 2 packs on a good day and 3 packs on a bad day. And it was only when I told the truth that I was finally given a smoking cessation course that worked. So that is, that's a classic area where people lie. Asking people how much they smoke is generally not going to get you an accurate answer. Observing measures what we actually did, and past behavior is the best predictor still of future behavior. Because contrary to what we think, we don't change others, really. we decide to make changes ourselves. And believe me, it's a lot easier at your age than it is at mine. So, mass versus niche market. What is meant by this? Well, it's very, very simple. It sounds very complicated, but it isn't. Mass, think grand, think very big, think the majority. Over 50% of the market needs the product. Then niche market. Now think minority, a niche, a corner, a minority, less than 50%. So less than half need that market. Okay, so I'm going to tell another story on myself. At 13, I had a really, really painful trip to the dentist. He thought he deadened the particular tooth he was working on. He hadn't. And I just about jumped out of my seat. It was absolute agony. And I made a huge error. I decided that I was never going to go to the dentist again. And I was wrong. I went one more time. I would not wish that visit on my worst enemy. It was 2 hours of having every remaining tooth ripped out of my head. So the reason why I tell you this is I used to, like you, buy these products that are clearly mass market products, toothbrush and toothpaste. Now, denture products. And the truth of the matter is most niche market products, there is a low selection. Usually I have just one brand I can pick in terms of denture products. And if I don't like the brand, it's tough. Go without. Have your teeth fall out on camera. Whereas with toothbrushes and paste, there were all kinds of varieties. So again, lesson learned from me, please don't do what I did. Go to the dentist. A little bit of pain now saves an awful lot later on. A maths education is a mass market product because everyone needs it. A business education is niche market. It's elective. Hairbrush is mass market. Wig is a niche market. Primary, secondary, and college education in the UK is a mass market. University education in the UK is a niche market. Less than half of us go for it. Gaming consoles would be a mass market, certainly today. Laser tag and paintball would be more of a niche market. Football, I would argue, is a mass market product, whereas tennis, for example, is more of a niche market. HD TV is now a mass market product. It used to be a niche market product. So now Super HD TV is what is required there. So that's mass versus niche. The next area we're going to look at is market versus product orientation. Now, when I heard of market orientation, I've always thought that that just meant you paid really close attention to what your customers need now. And that's exactly what it means. So isn't every company market oriented? No. Not the case. Let me illustrate for you here. So we've got two companies. One is Ryanair, and the other one is Apple Computer. So which of those two companies would you say gives the best customer service? Well, to me, you might have heard of some rather negative things about Ryanair across the airwaves after the COVID-19 situation unfolded. And we should remember that their whole industry is struggling. So it's a bit rough for me to pick on them now, but the only time I've experienced Ryanair's customer service was on an overbooked flight. I was flying back from Krakow, Poland to London, and I'd been there for business. and this was the cheapest fare I could find. And so I was waiting in a long line to check in. I had a blemish in my passport, and I was told with great glee, actually, by the lady who was checking me in, that I could not board and that I had lost the entire amount of my ticket and would have to rebook on them or another airline. I did not find that terribly impressive. Whereas with Apple, I'm not an Apple person myself. I'm more a Microsoft person, but I've heard some wonderful things about their customer service, and I've experienced it myself on a couple of occasions. Ryanair, though, is actually market-oriented, and Apple is product-oriented. Okay, so how does this work? Ryanair asks this question: what is the consumer's appetite for budget travel? Apple asks this question: what does the consumer need tomorrow that they don't even know they want today? Quite a different question, isn't it? So Ryanair says, at what low price point do we get the most bookings? Apple says, what high price point signals to early adopters that they are visionary? Quite a difference. So I've been doing a lot of thinking about this as I prepared for this, and I am willing to confess that I care too much about the market. I care too much about what you think and what your parents think, and not so much about what we're doing together, which is we are focused on getting you the best possible business qualification that we can. And that's super important. So I'm making a change. I think I need to be more product oriented. Your opinion is very important to me, but in so much as it tells me whether we're on the right track together towards this qualification. What is important, though, is that I impress upon you what is necessary to get the very best qualification in business. So I pledge to be more product oriented from this point forward. Existing customers versus potential customers. Again, I'm telling all kinds of embarrassing stories here. Existing customers versus potential customers. What do you focus on? Is the future of my business defined by where I am today and who my customers are today? My answer to that 2 years ago would have been, that's me. That's what I want to look at. Or is it where I want to be and who my potential customers could be tomorrow? Am I forward looking or am I basically backward looking? Interesting point. So you may have seen this shop. If it looks familiar, it's probably where many of us first met. And you certainly weren't calling me sir at the time, because I took on an assignment for a little convenience market, the White Rock Market. And I helped to transition that business from one owner who wanted to sell it to another owner who wanted to buy it. And the gentleman who bought it, his name is Ramesh. He's doing a wonderful, wonderful job in the shop. I highly recommend it now. He wanted to put together a promotion. He asked me to put together a launch promotion for his new shop. And I mean, that's my forte. I'm right there. I'm thinking of all of the ways that we can have the most successful launch. And I'm obsessing about existing customers. Now, Ramesh, on the other hand, is looking to the future. So this is what happened. Our existing customers, the number one group of existing customers was not students, that was number two group. Number one group was street drinkers. Now, I don't have anything against street drinkers. I fully understand the intoxicating effects of what they enjoy doing. So I wanted to put together something really exciting for them. So I focused on what they needed, and I put together a £1.49 meal deal. We looked at getting the lowest cost items that we could, barely scraping any profit by, but I thought, well, when they come into the store, they're going to buy all kinds of other things. Don't know what I was thinking of, but anyway, that's where I was. Ramesh was targeting wine drinkers. Now, there was not a wine drinker that visited that shop, maybe 2 in a month. But he wanted to put together the widest selection of wines to try to draw in a new clientele. So what happened? Well, street drinkers plus £1.49 meal deal equals an exponential increase in shoplifting. So that's what my contribution was. Ramesh, wine drinkers plus expansive selection equals an exponential, explosive, if you like, increase in sales and profits. So I just want to give my apologies to the owner of White Rock Market, Ramesh, and he paid a lot for Mr. Hobden's education in this regard. Now, the last one, I know this looks awfully, awfully busy, but it's really quite simple. But let me ask you this first. If you were asked a question and there were only 2 possible answers and you didn't know the answer, what is the likelihood that you would get the answer right? I'm sure you're probably thinking, like I am, about 50%, right? Well, then you're going to have to explain something to me. How did over 70% of my year 11s this year get this wrong on their mock, their last mock? I have no clue. So I'm going to try to make sure that this doesn't happen to you. So this is how we're going to do it. I want you to look, because to me, you know, I'm mildly dyslexic. These 2 words, quantitative and qualitative, look about the same to me. So how do I tell them apart, and how do I know which is which? Particularly considering that they're polar opposites almost. Okay, quantitative, look at those first 5 letters, quant. The same first 5 letters as quantity. A quantity is always going to be a number. Now look at qualitative. So quality. A person's qualities are defined by words. So think more about English class there versus quantitative being maths class. I mean, they are that different. So one is very specific. Quantitative asks for drilled down exact information, whereas qualitative is more difficult to define. It asks for words. It asks for customers to tell us about their feelings, about their emotions that might drive purchasing behavior. Quantitative is precise, whereas qualitative is interpretable. You can say, well, this could mean this or that or this or that, and we've got to ask more questions. Quantitative asks closed-ended questions. In other words, is it this or is it that? Qualitative asks open-ended questions, meaning more like a fill in the blank, and lets the customer decide how they answer to it. So there are a number of other defining features, but all of the questions that you answered on the survey that you did for this class, all of those questions were quantitative. They give very precise data. They give some wonderful charts and graphs, but they don't get to the bottom of what's behind those answers. And that's why, as an alternative to doing the worksheets, I'm offering the opportunity to design a 3-question qualitative follow-up to this survey. Okay. I might mention, by the way, the Year 11 business exam. Quantitative questions make up just 10%, just 10%. And it starts off with some multiple choice. Qualitative, short and long answer essay format make up 90%. And that's precisely why I'm also offering extension questions as an alternative to the worksheets, because they allow you to practice exam results. Okay, so I do need to make one statement before I go into the survey itself. Use of surveys and interviews as a marketing tool. You need to be very cautious of this. So research companies attach marketing information to your personal information, and they sell it to anyone who will buy it. And the term survey is a legitimate term for this use. So be careful if someone calls you up and offers you something for free if you take a survey. Nothing is for free, and selling your personal information can be very, very expensive. Do not provide your name, address, phone number, or even validate that that's who it is. Best advice is, if they have your personal information already, say, please remove me from your list and never call me again, and the call is over. If you go through with the survey, you will find out that you've unwittingly given permission for this company to sell your information to all of creation, and you'll be bombarded with phone calls. I've done it, I've fallen for it a couple of times, and just would ask you not to. If you're asked to take a survey over the phone and it seems too good to be true, it probably is. So even anonymous surveys can be used by businesses to influence customers, but detached from your API, this is relatively harmless. So I offered you the opportunity to do this survey anonymously. And I could do that because I was asking closed-ended questions. So it wasn't a threat based on what I was, I couldn't receive information that I would have to act on. Let's put it that way. So what I did in this survey is I seeded in a few questions that I really didn't need to know the answer to. I was trying to persuade you to take an action. Okay, so very quickly, meet Mr. Hobden. Mr. Hobden is a supplier of business education services. His customers are a select group of owners and potential owners of virtual businesses of the future focused on success through education, and their primary investors who are often co-located at the same facility, your parents or guardians. Mr. Hobden used to be able to see, talk with, shake hands with his customers, but now he can't because they've all gone virtual or online. Mr. Hobden is customer focused, and he realized while preparing this lesson that he is also market oriented and might need to make a change. We've already talked about that. Mr. Hobden's product to qualification in business studies are tough, and he is concerned that some of his customers are falling behind. So my primary influence over you, my customers, is positive word of mouth, frankly, from you. If I get a lot of positive word of mouth, as this is an elective, more people will be interested in business to learn about business. If I have lots of openings, however, in my class, because the word of mouth was negative, then a lot of people sort of drop into it because they didn't know what else to do. And that makes a tougher learning experience for us in the classroom. So I'm very, very focused on helping to shift the momentum of my business towards potential customers that really want to be in class. So I've got some powerful secondary research tools, some of which I'll tell you about. That they come from automated business tools, but I also need your input. So I put out a massive survey and a number of you took it. I really appreciate that. I've left it open. So if you've not yet taken it, please do so. Once you've taken it and you go back into the link, the results are automatically available. So I made this survey anonymous so I could get you to tell me the truth. And that is really, really important, because if I don't get the truth, then it's all a waste of time, right? And even with anonymity, you had a choice. You could have chosen to please me and tell me what I wanted to hear, or what you thought I wanted to hear, or you could have the courage to tell the truth and tell me what I need to hear. So it is our nature as human beings never to seek what we need to hear once we've heard what we want to hear. So I was really hoping here that you would tell me the truth. So one of the reasons why I find market research so fascinating, and the area in mathematics, by the way, that it comes from is called statistics, is because of what I can find out that you didn't realize you were being asked. I happened to know how truthful you were in this survey because I validated the results, and this is how I did it. So I already knew the answer to 3 of the questions, but I asked them anyway because I wanted to see what you told me. In 3 cases, I know something even more accurate than what you tell me you did. I know what you actually did. By comparing what you said you did with what you actually did, I can predict how truthful you were on this survey. I'm not telling you which 3 questions gave me validation. Never reveal your validation questions, because doing so will allow people to defeat validation in future surveys. So I'm not going to tell you which ones, but I am telling you how I did it. If less than 3 in 4 of you, or 75%, told me the truth, then the class is over and you need to retake the survey and be honest, please. But if accuracy is greater than 75%, the degree to which it's over 75% is the degree to which it is worthy of our attention. So accuracy of this survey is projected to be greater than 90%. And I want to say a really sincere thank you to you. So the results. I'm going to let you take a tour through the results. I've looked at them and drawn my own conclusions. I'll be sharing that with you when you come back after a brief break. But I would ask you, as you go through the results, to pay attention to the following. Do you think that was a marketing question? Did I ask it because I needed information, or did I ask it to create a need in you to do something? Second, do we have enough information to commit to an action? If so, what should that action be? And if we don't have enough information, what qualitative, open-ended question would you ask your business classmates across the cohort to get the answers we need? So go ahead and click on the link. Take a look at the survey results at your leisure. As you go back in, there will be a second tab magically appearing, as long as you've completed the survey, that gives you responses. Look those up. They are changing dynamically. I saw a few extra people take the survey recently, so please continue to use that tool. I'll see you when you get back. Okay, this is what I heard from your feedback. Got very distinctly the impression that you are either choosing to learn or not, that you view this very much as your choice, and that my role is to make learning more fun and enjoyable so that you want to learn. So I got that task. That's on me. It's already well underway, and hopefully you're beginning to see some things get more interesting in business class. I heard very, very clearly that the primary work that's assigned, these worksheets, are boring. I'm going to provide other activities as alternatives to them. The worksheets are meant to have you go back over the information in your mind so that it moves from short-term memory to mid-term memory. But there are other ways to do that that will help you further in the exam and for overall marks on the qualification. So those will be provided. That's already in place. Many of you have far more parental support than I anticipated. And I'm trying to do a number of lessons, this one included, for example, that might have some appeal to parents as well. So that's already underway. Lots of you are still struggling with tools, and boy, do I know what this feels like now, because I've just gone through 2 weeks of not being able to get my virtual background up and running and not being able to retake this class, so that I can show you that I am indeed listening, that my production values will go up, and I will try to make things a lot more entertaining. Some of you would use chat if we got a chat capability. I have been in touch with IT about that, and chat capability will be part of the Microsoft Teams implementation that will be happening, I think around the end of September is the current guess, but keep in mind we're in a much less predictable world than we were a few months ago, so that could possibly change. You like the flexibility of pre-recorded lessons. I was really going to push for live interactive lessons on the Zoom platform, but you very, very clearly said that you like the flexibility to listen to your lessons when you need to, or even decide that you don't need them to do the work. And given that you are choosing whether you learn or not, that's okay with me. I'm going to try to make these much more impactful so that you will get some benefit from my experience, hopefully towards your qualification. Okay. So that is it. You'll notice that one of the other pieces of feedback is you don't want to see any more iAchieve talking heads. So I've not even begun to flip the pages of iAchieve. I've added some material that, that is not actually in the presentation. For example, validation is something that's probably more an A-level subject, but I wanted you to know that I had indeed done it, and that I was very, very grateful that you were truthful. Okay, so time for a quick quiz. Here we go. Market research, the quiz. Number 1, is Mr. Hobden marketing to a mass or niche market? Number 2, Mr. Hobden is very market oriented. Does he need to make a change to a product orientation, and why? Number 3, can Mr. Hobden influence his potential customers improving his customer base, and how does he do that? Number 4, Mr. Hobden's secondary research, tracking in tools, is very valuable because it tells him what his customers are doing. What does he need to add to tell him why? 5, and this is double points, Mr. Hobden thinks he knows his customers, so what type of data did he gather? 6, as he doesn't surely know them all that well, what type of data should he have included? And 7, did he use his survey for marketing purposes, and if so, how? Okay, please stop the recording right now if you have not yet answered those, because I'm going to go over the answers momentarily. Okay, here are the answers. Number 1, mass or niche market. It's niche, it's business class. If it was maths class, it would be mass. Mr. Hobden is very market oriented. Does he need to make a change to be more product oriented, and why? Yes, his product is a qualification. Customers need to know the requirements. Otherwise, there's no point in heading in that direction. Can Mr. Hobden influence his potential customers? How does he do that? Yes, through positive word of mouth, very similarly to other businesses. Mr. Hobden's secondary research, tracking in tools, is very valuable because it tells him what his customers are doing. What does he need to add to tell them why? A survey to find out how he can better support his customers. And I'm going to ask you to help me with that in the assignment coming up. Mr. Hobden thinks he knows his customers, so what type of data did he gather? Quantitative data. You can see that because it was all closed-ended questions. Is it this or is it that? What I should have asked is qualitative data. Now, when I ask qualitative data, I will be doing so in a follow-up. It will be open-ended. And in that case, you can tell me anything. And if you tell me certain things, I'm obligated by my teaching contract to ensure that that information gets to the right people. So I can't promise anonymity on a qualitative follow-up. So just be aware of that I am having to take action on whatever you tell me is going on. So did he use his survey for marketing purposes, and how? And the answer, yes. Numerous questions focused on asking you to engage in home learning. Not necessarily that I needed to know. My tools tell me, for example, how many lessons have been watched, for how long, etc., etc. So that is all taken care of and tracked for me. So I ask the question sometimes because I know that not a lot of people have seen the particular item I'm talking about, and I know that it could have tremendous value to them. So if you are 0 to 3, please study iAchieve Unit 1, Session 3, okay? Or study it again. 4 out of 10 is a level 1 pass, 5 out of 10 is a level 1 merit, 6 out of 10 is a level 1 distinction, 7 out of 10 is a level 2 pass, 8 out of 10 is a level 2 merit, 9 out of 10 is a level 2 distinction, and a distinction star to anyone who got 10 out of 10. Please let me know if you did that. That is absolutely wonderful. Now, 3 choices to demonstrate understanding. So option 1, for those of you seeking a level 1 qualification or a level 2 pass, continue with the worksheets. It's worksheets 27 to 31, or continue with them if you're going for a higher level qualification, but the worksheets really help you to retain the data. Option 2, for those seeking a level 2 merit or distinction that don't like doing the worksheets, this is perfect for you. There are extension tasks now for each worksheet, 27 to 31. Pick one per worksheet, answer it, and turn that into me in a Word document, preferably electronically. Option 3, help me with the following survey. You will need to open a Gmail account if you don't have one. Then you go to Chrome, top right-hand corner, and you click on this. Then it opens up this box and you click on Drive, Google Drive. Once you're in the Drive itself, go down on this side, almost in the middle, second column over, open this up and go all the way down to More. On More, it will open up another menu and you select Google Forms, okay? So once you're there, open an untitled form and title it as follows below. This would be year 10 home learning follow-up survey. Think of 3 qualitative questions, open-ended questions, okay? And then put the first one in here where it says untitled question, okay? And then select basically what, there'll be a drop down come up and select the answer format. And there's one of 2 choices. It's either a short answer if you're just looking for a couple of words, or if you're looking for a sentence or more or a paragraph, it's the long answer, or what's referred to here as paragraph answer. So depending as to the length of answer that you're expecting, pick one of these, then indicate if the question must be answered. There's a little box down underneath that says required, yes or no. Probably it should be required. And then add for the next question and repeat that process again. When you are finished, in order to get credit for this, add me as a collaborator. And you do this, you go up to the 3 dots and you click add collaborators, and then you key in my email. It will send me an email and I will give you credit for all of the worksheets for doing this for me. And then I will also get to take a look at the survey and decide which questions go into a qualitative follow-up. And I'll hopefully be sharing the answers of that for you, if not before the end of this year, then certainly as next year starts, and I will already have made some changes based on the feedback that you give me. So thank you for allowing me to teach market research and frankly to learn from you in that particular survey. When businesses don't know, they ask or they find out if they need to know. The cost of guessing or gambling is too high for a business. It might be okay for us, but it's not okay in business. In business, there's a big difference between knowing and understanding what happens when you actually know how to implement knowledge. Saying and doing, we talked about, are very different things. Doing drives business, not saying. A business develops an accurate understanding of its business with a balance of quantitative and qualitative data. Both are equally important and miles apart in terms of the kind of information they represent. Being overly obsessed with existing customers can hurt your future potential. Don't look to the past in business, look to the future. And product-oriented companies care about customers every bit as much as, if not more than, market-oriented companies. Thank you so much. It's been a great pleasure to redo this lesson, and hopefully a lot more people will watch it now. Take care. Bye now.